for the party. And I just something you said that really bothered me to even hear this is even a possibility. But you mentioned that in the duplication room, you saw Trump ballots counting as Biden ballots, that Biden votes, right? Trump votes were being counted as Biden votes. Now, I just want to be clear here. That you gave an affidavit, right? This is under oath. This is the truth. You witnessed that happening.
Yes, sir.
In
More
the
than
room.
once.
More than once. And the explanation from the supervisor was what?
Right. I am not going to listen to this. If you have to be removed from the building, you will be. You're interrupting testimony and questioning. End it. End it. Mr. Biasucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bergman, if you could just repeat that for one more time, and what was the reaction from the supervisor when you asked him that question?
Mr. Chairman, legislators, we reported this ballot default in the screen as a Biden Democratic ballot. We reported this to the supervisors and others in the room, commented that they had witnessed the same manipulation at other times. We were never told what, if any, corrective action was taken. Nothing that I know of had ever been corrected. And as I believe I mentioned right after that, I was yelled at, whatever, reprimanded the next day by my own supervisor for causing trouble and bringing up things that I shouldn't have been bringing up.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Senator Allen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Linda, it's so good to see you again, and thank you for hanging in there and doing the work that you're doing. I would like to bring up what the Maricopa County supervisor said in their letter when they certified the Maricopa County vote. They said the Dominion tabulation equipment was vetted by a bipartisan equipment advisory committee before the contract was finalized. The committee tested the functionality and accuracy of the tabulation equipment before it was used in any Arizona election. The Dominion tabulation equipment met mandatory requirements during the accuracy test before the presidential primary and general election, and after each of these 2020 elections, the hand count audit shows the machines generated an accurate count. And so it's interesting to hear as you talk about being there as they're testing the machines and all the breakdowns and the problems that went on. Were the supervisors not made aware of the problems that came up when you were doing the audit?
I find it difficult, Mr. Chairman, legislators, I find it difficult that they weren't aware of it, because I was aware of it. I am just a nobody, I'm another voter. And if I was aware of it and I could pass it on to the supervisors, as well as the governor's staff, as well as other people in power in the Arizona Republican Party, I find it difficult that they did not know. Why is it, and let me ask a question if I may, how do we know that the same systems were being used and that the machine wasn't changed and that there weren't problems? We know during the election itself that many of the machines, I believe in almost all locations, were shut down at the exact same time, because while I was working at the elections department, the machines were shut down.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you for that. I'd like to follow up on the duplication. How many duplication did you get to see? Because the previous person that gave testimony, I asked this question about my concerns over the duplication thing. Who is there being sure that it's entered into the machine properly and correctly and it's observed? So can you tell me more about that process? How's that done, the duplication process?
Okay. This was only for the general election now, because I worked it also during the primary, so I'm only speaking about it for the general. A machine is put before you, about, I would say this high, this wide. And the actual ballot, the person's ballot, your ballot, sir, could be on the left-hand side. A blank ballot is then placed on the screen, the same screen, and we are to duplicate the votes from the person's ballot over to the right with the intent, that's the magic word, the intent of the voter. Most of the things that go through the duplication room, not the adjudication room, are because they're soiled or they're damaged. They could be ripped. There could be a number of reasons why it wouldn't go through the tabulation machine. So we had to duplicate it to a clean ballot. My Democratic partner, whom I worked with for quite a while, I worked in there for a good 4 days, probably 8 to 10 hours a day. So we did this on a number of ballots. So you asked me how many ballots. We could get through a ballot in about 15 seconds. So figured out over a 10-hour day, over 3 days, that's how many ballots we could see. When we had a chance to go ahead and start moving all the names from the original ballot over to the sample ballot, some of those ballots were already completed. They were pre-filled out with names. So we had to go ahead and erase all the names on the right-hand side. Could have been Democrat, could have been Republican, could have been independent. We didn't look, we just had to erase all those existing names that were already inputted on those ballots on the duplicated one. We started moving the names over, and we would check each other as a Democrat and Republican to make sure that we were correcting each other. No supervisors, no observers were behind us at all times. The observers, which were very few and far between in that room, never came back to where we were. We were behind the adjudication room. So it was difficult at best to see anything. There was a full wall there. Nobody could see through it, unless you're Superman. We started moving all the names from the actual ballot over to the regular ballot. Again, we had to even move all the ballots if they were 2 for Trump, one that was handwritten, one that wasn't. So it wouldn't be counted at all because we were told it was an overvote. We had to follow the exact same ballot. When we were ready to push pass through at the very bottom, it was just vote okay. We could see that all of a sudden the ballot was being reverted back to either a Democratic Biden ballot, or, and this didn't happen every time, but more often than not, it was going back to a Democratic ballot, or it would just revert back to whatever names had been on that ballot when we started. So we could never judge whether that ballot was actual, and we didn't have any recourse. We couldn't go back. Once it's in the system, it's in the system.
Once it's in the system, in other words, you couldn't correct it, because once you push the button, then it's in the system, and you can't go and say, wait, Dick, that's not what I entered.
No, not once it's already through, no. The only other time that we would have an option to be able to see that ballot is at the very end of the day, when we would, at each team would get a whole list of how many ballots they had looked at. We would, if there were any problems with it, we would check on that mimeograph form to see if it was correct or not correct, or if a certain judge was put in or not put in, if, whatever that voter intended. If it still seemed to be a problem where my partner and I didn't agree with the way it came across, we could go to our supervisor, who gentleman's name was Bruce, either Bruce or John. We would go to one of them and ask them, would you please check the machine or check your records to see if these were correct? And we had a number of times that we had to go back in, and they said, yeah, this is the vote that was put in. And it was sometimes correct and sometimes not.
Thank you.
But we couldn't change it at that point.
Mrs. Brickman, I have a question for you, and it's been alleged, and I don't know if, I know that you have had something to do with the whole machine certification and all that. It's been alleged that there were certain machines that were swapped out on the day of the election that were actually not certified. Can you confirm that or dispute that?
I cannot say anything to that. I don't know, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Giuliani, do you have any more questions?
Sure, just a few, because I'm struck by the fact that we're kind of ending where we began.
We still have.
Colonel Colson, Phil here testified at the very beginning about Dominion, and now Ms. Brickman is telling us pretty much the same things. I didn't realize that you know quite a bit about Dominion.
I'm learning very quickly.
And is it correct that it has an association with Smartmatic?
Yes,
And Smartmatic is a Venezuelan
yes.
company that was started by Chavez in 2003, 2004 for the purpose of fixing elections.
Yes, sir.
And then Smartmatic worked with a company called Sequoia. I'm trying to simplify this. And Sequoia did an election in Chicago that was, even by Chicago standards, so bad that they fired Sequoia and Smartmatic. Can you imagine how bad it was for Chicago to fire them? And then there was a congressional hearing that's in the congressional record, from which I read you Carolyn Maloney's letter. All you have to do is read her letter, and it tells you that the company has Venezuelan origins and was invented for the purpose of fixing elections. And then, because you couldn't use the name Sequoia or Smartmatic anymore, Dominion acquired Sequoia, which had all the Smartmatic software and had all the Smartmatic sneaky games and algorithms in it, which also involved Chinese technology. And they started using it under the name Dominion, but would never disclose the history. But you would think that any prudent governor, secretary of state, or commissioner of elections would do the kind of research that you do when you give out a multi-million-dollar contract. I mean, I ran a city, and when I gave out multi-million-dollar contracts, the company was scrubbed very, very carefully. And if this had ever happened to me when I was the mayor, everybody who did it would be fired immediately and investigated. I wouldn't want my city having its votes counted by a Canadian company, much less a company involved with Venezuela. So you are corroborating the facts that our expert witness gave at the very beginning of the hearing, and I really appreciate very, very much your contribution. And also because Dominion has created this problem all over our country. It's not just here in Arizona. You shouldn't feel alone. Our country was victimized by these people in a very, very horrid and disgusting way. And thank you.
Representative Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Linda. I have a couple quick questions for you. First one is, do you think what we're doing here today is useful or a waste of time?
Mr. Chairman, legislators, I think it's very definitely something that we needed to be done. We need to go ahead and take this to you as the legislators, whether we have the governor behind us or not. He's never been behind us and never will be. This is something that you, in your right minds as American citizens, as voters in Arizona, need to do for us. And I thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And I believe that, yeah, go ahead. I believe that this is not in vain. Some have called it a dog and pony show. I think that it's showing the public what we're dealing with, and I hope it shows our leaders that we need to look into this further. Are you familiar with the DEF CON conferences that the Maricopa County Recorder has sent staff and himself to on taxpayer money? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
Well, let me read you the results of the 2 years ago. It says, this is the third year we've hosted the Voting Village, and this year we were able to give attendees access to over 100 machines, all of which are currently certified for use in at least one U.S. jurisdiction. The units tested included direct recording electronic voting machines, electronic poll books, ballot marking devices, optical scanners, and hybrid systems. The hackers at DEF CON once again compromised every single machine over the 2.5-day event, many of them with trivial attacks that require no sophistication or special knowledge on the part of the attacker. I'm gonna go ahead further on in the comments. In too many cases, Physical ports remain unprotected, passwords remain unset or left in default configurations, and security features of the underlying commercial hardware are left unused or disabled. In addition to showing the security weakness found in the wide variety of election tech on display, the Voting Villages team report shares, and this is important, its strong recommendations for improving election security, most notably the urgent need for paper ballots and rigorous post-election audits. So what we've done here today, I think, is established that we need a rigorous post-election audit. They also go on to recommend that people get the attention of their elected representatives. That's what you guys have done here today. I appreciate that. So thank you, Adrian Fontes, for bringing this to our attention, that we do need to have rigorous post-election audits and that these machines are not secure. I also want to mention briefly that in Texas, 3 generations ago, that the county supervisors had talked about, that these election machines, they rejected it. And we haven't done anything this time to make sure that that rejection was corrected. How do you feel about that?
I think they should all be rejected in every one of the 6 swing states. Obviously Arizona, how it's happened, I'll say it again. I think it was bought and paid for by a few people at the top, and that's why it was not taken care of, but this needs to be done in every single state, not just the 6 swing states.
Thank you, Mrs. Brickman. Okay, are these something that's already been covered, or?
It's a clarification on the write-in ballot. And then I have a question for Mr. Mayor Giuliani that he made a comment during his statement.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it has to be clear, I'm confused a little bit. You covered it, Mr. Chairman. So when these ballots were there, if there was a ballot, because here's the problem. Republicans won the state of Arizona except for the 2 big offices. All the supervisors were voted in, Fontes lost. I mean, Republicans, the legislature maintained control. So that all happened. But what you mentioned was that if a check mark was for President Trump and then a write-in candidate, even if it said Trump, that ballot wasn't counted?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I think needs to be clear. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, Mayor, did I hear you correctly that says, and you haven't said it at all today, did you ask to meet with our governor, Doug Ducey, and he declined to meet with you?
Yes, sir. I texted him yesterday, the day before yesterday. I explained to him I was coming here. I explained why, and he never responded.
He did not even respond, sir?
I explained to him I'm the president's lawyer, and I'd like to have the courtesy of meeting with you.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, you were mayor of one of, if not the largest city on the East Coast as a Republican, and which has more people in that city than this state. And I think out of common courtesy and being on the same team, I apologize on behalf of whoever if they dropped the ball not responding to you.
I mean, I've been doing this kind of investigation for 50 years, and when people don't want to meet with me to hear the facts, I can kind of figure out why they're doing it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here, sir.
All right. We have our last witness, Mr. Mark Lowe. Are you in the building, or have you gone home? Senator Gowan. Hold on, Ms. Brickman. Not done yet, I guess. Mr. Gowan.
Hello, Linda. Are we there? Hello, Linda.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just one question. That's it. I want. Sounds like you're verifying what the colonel spoke about earlier. When I saw in your first issue here, where signatures were for verification and the standards, you were saying that at first they were high, and then they continued to get lower and lower standards, and then finally there were no standards. And I heard a couple others who were earlier saying there was like chicken scratch, but they were just saying, let's get through that.
That's correct, because we were told by our supervisors in the room that too many rejections of ballots had been thrown back because of not being able to verify, thank you, verify the signature, that it didn't match the original ballot or the original signature when the person registered to vote. So they said, speed it up.
So they directly told you that?
They
So,
did.
so in your opinion, there are ballots out there that were counted as a vote, that the signature was not verified on an early
Correct.
ballot.
Or there was no signature at all on the outside of the ballot. It was just a scribble, or some people signed with a heart. It was not a valid signature.
Thank you, ma'am.
You were done? All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Brickman. All right, we have one more witness, and that is Mark Lowe. Once Mr. Lowe is complete, Mr. Giuliani, I'd like you to wrap us up with your closing comments, and